Hey y'all, ego sumo colos este peregrinus vos iuxtim, nuntius veritatis domina est prenoctem. What's up? So this is just going to be a quick little video. There's not going to be anything for you to look at on the screen, but I found it funny because I just edited a video on Ophiuchus, and that's the purported 13th zodiac sign. And when I was doing this video, I was looking at the Glyph of Ophiuchus and I was like, what does this mean? And I'm trying to figure it out, you know, and I didn't want to look it up because when I ask a question like that, I like the answer to come in channeled. So I'm going to talk about what this glyph means as per my interpretation and what I channeled, because Ophiuchus, he did come through and he approved this message, as weird as that fucking sounds. So he was letting me in on a little bit of information. I don't know if he's gonna come through in this broadcast. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But he wants me to give this message, okay, the energy of Ophiuchus. Okay, so what we're gonna talk about first in terms of the glyph, I do have it in the other video. Both of these are gonna be linked with the other one down below. So if you want to check out either or, I do just want to tell you that this video is gonna be more for someone who considers himself on the closer towards a fourth dimensional and higher frequency vibration, meaning that you have eliminated much of the 3D realm illusion for like 90% of your time experience here in the Earth Matrix. So this might or might not be the video for you. You decide, you know where you're at on your journey. So I just wanted to give that little notation before we get started. So when I was channeling Ophiuchus and he came through for just a bit, it wasn't like pure, but like I said, if he wants to make an appearance now, he's more than welcome to. But basically, when we have a constellation or a name or something that is hyped up in the third dimensional realm, this is really a metaphor for energy. So it could be personified into someone in like a humanoid vessel or a mammalian vessel or a reptilian vessel, however you want to look at it, okay? But the thing is, these are simply metaphors for energy, just like Jesus is a metaphor for energy, just like Lucifer is a metaphor for energy. So me, right now, when I'm speaking about Ophiuchus, this is simply a metaphor for the energy of Ophiuchus. And what does this glyph mean? So this glyph is actually a U, and it looks like a little squiggly line, which is representative of the snake traversing in betwixt the U. Okay, now in my other video I do touch briefly that Ophiuchus is representative of someone who is also known as a snake charmer or snake bearer. And purportedly the story is that a fellow named Asclepius, later named Ophiuchus or whatever, I mean, depending on your sources, it's going to say different things, but that's basically, you know, they're kind of used as AKA, right? Asclepius Ophiuchus, okay? And so what's going to happen is that the name Ophiuchus with the snakes is that he purportedly murdered a snake with his staff, and then another snake came along and resurrected the murdered snake. Okay, so this is representative inside the actual glyph, the U with the snake running through it. This is metaphorical representative of death and rebirth, death and rebirth, death and rebirth. It is the U, the underworld, or if you want to look at it, thank you, Ophiuchus. He just came through. He said, or it could stand for universe. So it can stand for underworld or universe. So one is metaphorically the snake, the serpent. They died and they are born again. They traverse through the U, which means, from what I channeled, that the U is metaphorical for the two words I just stated, and it's also a metaphor from leaving third dimensional fears and proceeding along into fourth dimensional understanding. That is the U. So if we want to think of a U and then a snake running through it, the head is going to be first, and that's representative of fifth dimensional consciousness higher. The part where the U and the serpent intersect each other is representative of the fourth dimension, the balance of the poles of neutrality. You are the crux. You decide which way you wish to traverse. You wish to traverse to the head of the serpent, forward into fifth dimensional consciousness, or higher into fifth dimensional consciousness, or do you wish to be dragged backwards Dracwards. Wow, I was going to say Dracula and backwards. That was a message for someone, Dracula. Hey. So snail, that might be a message for someone else too. You need to keep it moving. Okay, so the snake and the snake's tail is not yet traversed the U, right? Remember, we're picturing a serpent traversing in betwixt the U. So the tail is the third dimensional representation. So are you going to be dragged back to the snail? I guess because things move so slowly. I don't know. Maybe I'll know what this means later, or maybe it's a message particularly for one of y'all motherfuckers. But either which way, so the slowness of the third dimension is where the tail is. It's going to drag you back, right? Because it's slow. That's what I believe the snail means in the context that I'm utilizing it here. So that's what's going to happen, right? So we want to picture that as a symbol. This is a symbol. This is the glyph of Ophiuchus. And then in my other video, I do state that the reason why Ophiuchus was dropped in the media, this is not necessarily because he's going to have a bearing on anyone's zodiacal chart. This is a metaphorical representation. Again, another story showing symbolism, occult symbolism, saying, look, this is what's going on. You die and you be reborn again to live as a god on earth. You are the serpent. Everyone has the serpent. Everyone has the Kundalini energy, right? Everyone has the Kundalini energy. That is representative of the serpents. They are traversing up and down the spine, right? Like the chakras, okay? When all your chakras are blasted open, when you truly live as a god on earth, then you essentially become the serpent charmer, right? Like that's who you become. You tame the Kundalini. You've tamed the reptilian portion of the brain, the mind, also the fourth dimensional representation of the reptilian energy. And then let's see, we have some notes here. So it's all about the symbolism of the resurrection. Just like Jesus has that story in I forget where it is. Was it the Bible? I don't know. I think it is. Jesus has the story of resurrecting Lazarus. Okay, Jesus also has the story of that he died, quote unquote, at the age of 33. Remember, if we're saying we're looking at Jesus and Ophiuchus and all these Lazarus even as metaphors, right? We look at the names, the big names. I'm pounding on the desk. I'm really channeling here. So if you hear that, because I'm using a microphone, I don't know what to tell you, but I'm we into it, okay? So Jesus is a metaphor, so we don't want to even now take into consideration if or if not Jesus was actually a physical man and representing portion of his hologram inside the humanoid vessel. But we want to look at Jesus in the sense of that, like what's happening now. Jesus is another metaphorical representation, just like Ophiuchus, of the life and the death and the regeneration. The snake is a symbol of the regeneration because it molts, it shapeshifts, it sheds its skin. It's always shedding its skin, okay? It's always transforming, right? Representation of Pluto. Pluto, I heard, just went into retrograde, okay? So now maybe this is why the snake fucking symbolism is coming in, okay? But this is seriously what that is. Jesus is a metaphor. He died allegedly, as the story goes, at the age of 33. He died on the cross, okay? And then what happened? He was put in a tomb. 3 days later, he come out the tomb brand spanking new. That is a motherfucking representation of the resurrection. That is the same representation of the symbolism of the U glyph with the serpent running through it as per Ophiuchus, okay? So what's going to happen now is that with Ophiuchus and all of this stuff and that narrative, we want to think of it as another representation of Jesus Christ, okay? Like with that resurrection. Whether you believe either of these characters was a real person, a real someone that inhabited a humanoid vessel or not, that's not really the debate of this context. If we want to look at it strictly from a metaphorical perspective, what happens, we see the subliminal occult symbolism. We see it with the serpent, okay? You continually traverse through that you, the underworld, the universe. That is how you become a master of the universe, by mastering the underworld. That is what is going on underneath your conscious mind. Under, sub, same thing. It means what lies beneath. That was also a movie. I recommend some of y'all might want to watch that. It's called What Lies Beneath. I think it came out in the year 2000. Yeah, symbolism in there, okay? So let me check my notes. Okay, so this is about the Kundalini energy. I said you talk about the death and the rebirth. So it can be an ego death, and you know, an ego death can happen many times, but it just depends, as Abraham Hicks says, and I'm going to use this because that's a pretty common name in terms of channeling higher frequency energy. They always say, right? They always say with Abraham Hicks is that you are continually moving forward in every moment, okay? You are having a quote-unquote vortex of things lined up for you, and the vortex is somewhat like in that book Power versus Force, and you look at the emotional spiral which you're traversing. Are you moving forward into love vibrational energy, or are you moving backwards into fear vibrational energy? Abraham Hicks states that if you even change that, if you even tip the scales to love vibrational energy moving forward to even 51% of the time, and then now you're in lower frequency energy 49% of the time, that is enough to tip the scales. So we can have an ego death many times as you're tipping the scales, and then soon your natural set point is going to be more in the love frequency, 5th dimension and higher, in terms of, let's say, 90% of the time, right? And then you are perpetually not even really going back to where the serpent's tail is, right? You're where the serpent's head is, okay? You're not going backwards. You're not being a snail. You're not having things slowed down. You're not being drugged back from the fucking past. You know what I'm saying? You're moving forward in an enlightened state, okay? So you traverse the subconscious. You weed out all of the motherfuckers in there that are causing you distress. Under, you, and we could even look at that as the you is like you, right? The me aspect of the I am, okay? The you, the ego portion of you that is holding you back from living as a god on earth, okay? Whew. Now let's see. So you face your fears, you overcome them, you overpower them, and then the illusion of fear is non-existent. Okay, it's not getting in the way of the sight, the vision of the eye of the all. The two eyes can sometimes cloud the perception of the third dimensional, fourth dimensional, fifth dimensional, sixth dimensional, right? It's the eye of the all sees all, right? It sees through every eye. It sees through the 3D eyes, it sees through the 4D eyes, it sees through 5D higher and above eyes, okay? So when you are seeing through the third eye, which sees through all, rather than the two eyes, which are limited, they can only see things because they reside at a 3D perspective. They can only see things in a 2D perspective, and that goes back to even if you want to look at quote-unquote physics. A creature residing in the third dimension sees their vision through their two eyes from a two-dimensional perception, okay? I forget what they're called. I don't fucking know. Was it height and length? But they cannot see the depth of a situation because they are 3D. Therefore, they can only see in 2D, because every time you move up a dimension, it's kind of like, let's say you're in the 5th dimension, you're seeing things from a 4D perspective, right? And if you're in the 6D, you see things from a 5D perspective, however you want to look at it, even metaphorically, okay? So when someone is seeing with the 3D eyes, now their vision is essentially 2D. They're not seeing the depth of the situation. But when someone has traversed the you, like I said with the serpent and the you symbolism, going back to Ophiuchus, what's happening is that you traverse, now you have at least tipped 51% of the scales, like Abraham Hicks said, into the forward motion, where now you are seeing mostly through the 4th dimensional eyes. This is where time gets distorted in the 4D, the dimension of time, also physics, by the fucking way. Okay, purported physics, who the fuck knows, right? But it's a good learning tool to understand this, in my view. So when you are seeing something through 4th dimensional eyes, as you are the balance of the neutrality, you choose, because you see every aspect of the situation that you could not have seen through just the 3rd dimensional 2 eyes that are only allowing you to see in 2D. You see through the 3rd eye, which can see through all dimensions at once. And then you choose, you want to proceed forward. And if you are already in that vibration where you're 51% or more in the quote-unquote vortex, as Abraham Hicks says, then you are going to see more things of that type of vibration, light energy, joyous energy, ecstasy, rather than being drugged back, rather than having that snail drag you back by the tail type of slowness and like density. Okay, that's how you do it. You go through the subconscious, you understand with the you, the underneath of what's going on in your subconscious mind, the underworld, and then you traverse into the universe. So now also, the last thing that I do want to say in my other video, what I touched on, is that the 13 sign quote-unquote astrological chart, which I don't know. I didn't really look too much into what a chart looks like from that perspective. I don't even know if they have chart calculators for that one, but what I'm going to say about this doesn't really have anything to do with it, but it kind of does. So when we're talking about the length of time in the zodiac signs, now I saw this, and other signs might mean different, but the one that came through in the context, because I'm talking about, death and rebirth, regeneration, traversing through the underworld, being born again while you're still in a physical vessel, right? You now... Okay, this is a representation of Scorpio. So this sign is betwixt, Ophiuchus, astrologically, if you want to think about it, is betwixt Scorpio and Sagittarius. So Scorpio is the last of the personal signs, okay? So this is Pluto, representation of personal transformation. Then Sagittarius is the first of the universal signs. So that's the first step towards God consciousness. This is why, also Christ consciousness, however you want to look at it, okay? Universal consciousness, higher knowledge. This is when they traverse the you, Ophiuchus, is representation of traversing from Scorpio, the transformation, to the Sagittarius, where you're already in that enlightened state. And I'm speaking metaphorically. I'm not saying that Scorpios are not enlightened, and I'm not saying that Sagittarius are the most enlightened. No, this is simply a metaphor astrologically for what the signs represent. This has nothing to do with the individual. This is a metaphorical representation. Okay, this is saying that anyone, metaphorically, when they're in the Scorpio energy as a metaphor, they are transforming themselves. Now they transition because they were the serpent tail. Now they're moving forward. Now they're at the crux where the you is, where Ophiuchus is, right? The symbol of the you. And then the Sagittarius is representation of the snail, the head. Why do I keep saying it? Snail, snake, tomato, tomato, whatever. This is representation of the slow movement, moving forward into that Sagittarius type of fire, enthusiasm, mutable energy, where it could go whichever way you choose, right? It's more of that liberation from the ego type of energy, where Scorpio is losing the ego. It's losing the relation to others, right? Because it is a... Oh my God, I just had the name. It is a social sign, right? Social meaning in terms of like how someone deals with others, okay? So the middle four signs are how someone deals with others, like, you versus them, us versus them, however, right? And then the universal signs are really about individuality and focus on the self, okay? And like the higher good of everyone involved. So then when we have it traversing, if we want to look at Ophiuchus as a symbol betwixt the transformation from, the others, and in this case the others would be indicative of the third dimensional realm, and then moving forward metaphorically into the higher knowledge, universal God consciousness with the Sagittarius energy and the higher self, higher learning, philosophies, things like that, questioning everything you've been taught. The Ophiuchus is representation of the actual, let's say when the phoenix is in the process of rebirthing itself in the energy that it's becoming, then that is the representation of Ophiuchus, okay? So when we have now I see it, right? Because I'm like, it doesn't make sense from like a linear or third dimensional perspective, but now I see this. That's why I'm adding this as a motherfucking addendum. The reason why the sign of Scorpio is so short is because it's representative of the short time that one takes whilst transforming themselves. Think about it. We'll go back to the Jesus analogy, right? Jesus was alive for 33 years. He transformed himself in 3 days. He was resurrected, right? That's a short time. Now, however we want to look at the three context in this symbolism, however we want to look at it, like someone could go their whole life up until a certain point, and then they can transform themselves in as quickly as 3 days. Everything is motherfucking possible. That's why Scorpio is representative of the short time frame that Scorpio comes out in the Ophiuchus in the 13th sign zodiac wheel, because transformation happens quicker than you think, quicker than the ego allows you to think. But first you have to get in that state, the mindset where you are knowing that you are tipping the scales from 49 to 51. You just tip it that one bit, boom, you are more in that God consciousness state, and then you are more aware of how quickly it is to transform yourself once you decide where you want to go. So at every moment, you're at the crux, you are that snake in the moment of transformation. Are you moving backwards towards the snail pace shit of the third dimensional realm, or are you moving forward into like warp speed ahead and shit with the higher consciousness where the head is at, okay? It's all symbolism. This is why, in my opinion, just from what I channel right now, thank you, Ophiuchus, again, we're going to say what this is a symbolism. You traverse the universe, you traverse the underworld, you traverse even you, aspects of you that perhaps you thought were shadow shit or didn't belong to you. But why were they even popping up in your experience? Because there was something there, and it might have been something more beneficial and positive than you even realize. If you just address them, you realize that they ain't scary and they ain't gonna harm your motherfucking ass, especially if you tip the motherfucking scale, okay? Especially if you're in that at least 51% in that in the head of the fucking dragon or snake, right? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Like, you take charge. It ain't something taking charge of you. So that is what I have for you today in regards to the symbolism of the serpent and the traversing. It's all about overcoming your ego mind in every moment to see things from an all-dimensional and depth perception, rather than just the dimension that the two physical eyes can see from a third dimensional vantage point. This is representation of living and sensing as a god on earth, because you are seeing in the 4D illusion, the illusion of time and space and all of that shit. You're seeing through the illusion. You realize that everything is now. So yeah, that's all my notes have to say here. So that's what I have for you in regards to this Ophiuchus. I am Oculus, the alien next door, purveyor of esoteric lore. We will chit-chat again soon.